I am 82 years old, and today I want to tell you a truth that most people take to their graves. Society tells us that a good life means a crowded life. They say that the ultimate tragedy of old age is sitting alone in a quiet house. They tell you to hold on to every friend, to keep the family together at all costs, to leave your door wide open, so you are not forgotten. I am here to tell you that old age does not require keeping every relationship alive. You do not owe anyone your remaining time, not even your own blood. It is early morning right now. I am sitting in the chair, in my old leather chair. The fabric on the armrests is worn thin from years of my hands resting right in this exact spot. I have a cup of black coffee on the small wooden table beside me. The house is completely silent. I can hear the tall clock ticking in the hallway. I can see the dust dancing in the morning light that comes through the large window in the living room. Outside, my small garden is covered in dew. The tomatoes are turning red on the vine. This is my sanctuary. It is empty, and it is the most beautiful thing I have ever known. But it took me a very long time and a lot of pain to earn this silence. When you reach my age, your physical body becomes a very strict accountant. When I was younger, my energy was like a river that never ran dry. I could work all day at the high school teaching history, coach the baseball team in the afternoon, come home to eat dinner with my family, and still have energy to read a book before bed. I never thought about the cost of my actions. Now, my energy is a very small jar of coins. Every single thing I do outside of this chair costs a coin. Walking to the mailbox costs a coin. Going to the grocery store costs 3 coins. Dealing with people who are loud or demanding costs all the coins I have for the entire week. Your body forces you to realize that your time is running out. It begs you to conserve your strength for the things that actually matter. My wife Eleanor passed away 10 years ago. We were married for 50 beautiful, quiet years. When she took her last breath in the hospital, the world went completely dark. For a long time, for the first year, I wandered around this house like a ghost. I did not know how to cook for one person. I did not know how to sleep on just one side of the bed. People saw my grief, and they decided I needed to be rescued. They could not stand to look that my sadness, my daughter Sarah, meant well. She would call me every day and tell me that humans are social creatures. She said I was going to wither away if I stayed in this big house by myself. My brother Thomas told me I needed to get out there and stay active. The neighbors looked at me with pity every time I walked down the driveway to get the mail. They all told me that isolation was the enemy of the elderly. They convinced me that my silence was a sickness that needed to be cured. So I listened to them. I decided I was not going to be the sad old widower. I opened my doors. I let the world back in. I told my daughter to bring the grandchildren over every single weekend. I told my brother he could come by whenever he wanted. I started going to a local diner every Tuesday morning to meet with a group of retired men from my old neighborhood. I even let my nephew move into the spare bedroom when he lost his job and needed a place to stay. I filled my calendar. I made sure there was always a car in the driveway, always a voice in the hallway, always a reason to wake up and perform the role of the happy old man. At first, it felt like I was doing the right thing. It felt like I was honoring Eleanor by keeping the house alive. But the reality of a crowded life is very different from the idea of it. It did not happen all at once. It was a slow, exhausting drain on my soul. It started with the noise inside my own walls. When you are 82 years old, your nervous system cannot process the chaos of the modern world the way it used to. My nephew liked to watch television late, into the night. I would be lying in my bed, trying to find sleep, and the low rumble of the action. Movies would vibrate through the floorboards. In the morning, I would walk into my kitchen, my sacred space, and find wet towels thrown over the dining chairs. There were dirty dishes stacked in the sink. The coffee pot was left empty and burned on the bottom. He would walk through the hallway with heavy boots. The sanctuary Eleanor and I built was turning into a cheap motel, and I was the unpaid staff. I was constantly picking up trash, wiping down counters, and feeling completely invisible in the home I worked 40 years to pay for. Then there were the Tuesdays at the diner. I thought I was maintaining important friendships, but I was just absorbing misery. The men sitting around that table did not want to talk about life or memories or anything beautiful. A man named Richard was the loudest of them all. He just wanted to complain. They complained about the government, the price of gasoline, their aching joints, maha, and their ungrateful children. I would sit there for 2 hours, drinking terrible dark coffee, letting their bitterness soak into my bones. They were angry at the world for changing, and they wanted me to be angry with them. I would drive home feeling heavy, dark, and completely exhausted. I would have to sleep for 3 hours just to recover from the simple act of listening to them talk. I realized that keeping a friendship alive just because you have known someone for 40 years is a terrible reason to keep suffering. The weekends with the family were not much better. My daughter would come over with her 3 children. They would run through the house, knocking over picture frames, screaming at their electronic devices. My daughter would sit on my couch and scroll through her cellular phone, occasionally looking up to complain about her husband or her job at the bank. She treated my home like a waiting room where she could dump all her anxiety. I was spending my fixed retirement income on expensive groceries to feed people who did not even look me in the eye when they ate. My phone was constantly ringing. It was always someone needing a favor, needing money, needing advice they would never actually take. I was constantly available. I was the reliable old grandfather. I was giving away the last few years of my life to keep everyone else comfortable while my own internal battery was flashing red. The breaking point came on a cold morning in November. It was raining heavily outside. I woke up at 5 in the morning, craving the quiet. I walked out to the kitchen to make my coffee. My nephew had left a half-eaten pizza on the beautiful wooden counter. The television in the living room had been left on all night, blaring a loud morning news broadcast into the empty room. I stood there in the harsh artificial light. My knees were aching. My chest felt tight. I looked around the room, and I realized I felt completely alone in my own home. I realized I was deeply, profoundly lonely. It was a terrifying revelation. I was surrounded by people. My calendar was full. My house was occupied. Yet I had never felt more isolated. I was performing the role of the good father, the good uncle, the good friend, but the man inside was suffocating. I realized that my fear of dying alone had forced me to live in a way that made me wish I was already dead. I was abandoning my own soul just to be polite. I thought about my friend Henry. Henry was a good man, a retired mechanic. He let his adult son move back into his house after a divorce. He spent his entire life savings trying to pay the debts of his son. He watched his house fill up with boxes and loud music and anger. Henry had a massive stroke 2 years ago, while standing in his own kitchen, arguing about a grocery bill he died on. The cold floor, completely depleted, surrounded by the noise he could never escape. I looked at the pizza box on my counter, and I knew I was walking down the exact same road. I knew that if I did not protect myself, this house and these people would drain the very last drop of life out of my veins. That very morning, I made a choice. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just possessed the cold, hard clarity of a man who has finally had enough. I walked into the living room and turned off the television. I walked into the spare bedroom, woke my nephew up, and told him he had exactly 2 weeks to find another place to live. He tried to argue. He tried to make me feel guilty. He told me that family is supposed to help family. I looked him in the eye and told him that I had helped him enough and it was time for him to leave. Later that afternoon, I called my daughter. I told her I loved her, but the Sunday visits were becoming too much for my health. I told her we would see each other once a month on my terms in a quiet restaurant. I called the men at the diner and told them I was not coming back. I took my phone and I turned the ringer completely off. I deleted numbers of people who only called when they needed money. I stripped my life down to the bare wood. The backlash was immediate and severe. My nephew called me a selfish old man. My daughter cried and asked me if I was going crazy or getting dementia. The neighbors whispered that the grief had finally broken my mind. I let them whisper. I let them think whatever made them comfortable. Their opinions did not pay my bills, and their opinions did not soothe my aching bones. When my nephew finally packed his bags and drove away, I walked to the front door. I turned the heavy brass deadbolt. The click of that lock was the best sound I have ever heard. I walked through the house and picked up all the remaining trash. I cleaned the kitchen counters until they shined. I opened the windows to let the cold, fresh rain air blow through the stale rooms. I made a pot of black coffee. I sat down in this exact leather chair. I closed my eyes and I listened to the massive, beautiful silence. It washed over me like a warm wave. The heavy weight I had been carrying in my chest for 3 years completely vanished. I could breathe again. I was finally alone, and I was finally safe. People are absolutely terrified of the quiet. They fill their lives with meaningless noise, toxic relationships, and endless obligations because they do not know how to sit in an empty room and face their own soul. They will demand that you join them in their chaos because your peace makes them realize how loud their own lives are. Do not let them drag you back into the storm. When you reach this age, you must protect your energy like it is gold. Every time you say yes to a dinner you do not want to attend, every time you answer a phone call from someone who only drains you, every time you let someone cross your boundaries, you are spending your actual life force. You are paying for their comfort with your physical health. You are allowing them to steal the very limited time you have left on this earth. You are not a bad person for wanting to be left alone. You are not a failure because you do not have a house full of people on the holidays. You have spent decades working, raising children, compromising, biting your tongue, and putting everyone else first. You have paid your heavy dues to society. You have carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. You have earned the absolute right to put that weight down and close the door. There is a massive difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a state of lack, an empty room that you desperately want someone to fill. Solitude is a glorious state of completion. It is a room that is already full because you are in it. I am alone almost every single day, but I am never lonely. I have my history books, I have my garden, I have my memories of the life I built. I have the deep, abiding comfort of my own company. I wake up when I want to wake up. I eat what I want to eat. If I want to sit on the porch and watch the birds for 4 hours without speaking a single word, I do it. I am the master of my own time again. There is a profound dignity in handling your own life. When you stop waiting for other people to make you happy, you realize you already have everything you need. You realize that most of the relationships you were holding on to were just habits. They were just routines built on guilt and obligation. When you drop the guilt, the fog clears. You see that you do not need to be a counselor for your adult children. You do not need to be a financial safety net for relatives who refuse to work. You do not need to be an audience for friends who only want to complain. Your only real job right now is to find a small patch of sun and sit in it. Life is incredibly short, even when you make it to 82. The final chapter should not be spent managing the stress of other people. It should be spent making peace with yourself, forgiving your own mistakes, and learning to love the sound of your own quiet breathing. Look closely at your life right now. If your phone ringing causes a knot in your stomach, you need to stop answering it. If visiting certain relatives leaves you feeling like you need to sleep for 2 days, you need to stop visiting them. You do not owe anyone an explanation. You do not need to invent an excuse about a doctor appointment or a bad back. You can simply say no. The word no is a complete sentence. It is the most powerful tool you possess in your later years. Use it generously. Protect your sanctuary. Your home is not a free community center. It is the fortress you built over a lifetime of hard work. You paid for the walls. You paid for the roof. You get to decide who crosses the threshold. If you find someone who fits into your peace without disrupting it, keep them close. But do not tear your life apart trying to accommodate people who do not respect your silence. Let them call you selfish. Let them judge you. Their judgment cannot touch you. When you are sitting in your own quiet house, drinking your coffee, living exactly how you want to live, you only have a certain number of mornings left. You only have a certain number of quiet afternoons to watch the sun move across the floor. Do not spend them managing the chaos of other people. Reclaim your space, reclaim your time, and reclaim your peace. Peace is expensive. Stop giving it away for free.